Good day, everyone. We are the group 4, and our topic is all about a world of ideas. By the end of this discussion, the group must be able to explain and understand the evolution of media and determine how global media influences different cultures and affects global integration. First, we will discuss the lesson 1, global media culture. Global media culture explores the relationship between the media, culture, and globalization. It is the mass communication on a global level, allowing people across the world to share and access the same information. Media are the communication outlets or tools used to store and deliver information or data. In general, media refers to various means of communication. For example, newspapers. It gives information or opinion about current events and news. Media have an important impact on cultural globalization. It provides an extensive transnational transmission of cultural products and contributes to the formation of communicative networks and social structures. The rise of new global media has imposed their systems on large portions of the world. New media is the mass communication of using digital technologies such as the internet. And now let's proceed to the evolution of media and globalization. 5 time periods usefully capture the study of globalization and media. Consist of oral, script, print, electronic, and digital. First, oral communication. Language was developed around 1.75 million years ago. In this period, human speech is the oldest and most enduring of all media. Language allowed humans to cooperate and share information, and according to Osler in this period, language was their most important tool. When speech developed into language, it has become a medium that aid globalization. But how? Language help humans to move and allow them to cooperate, such as sharing information that would help the human ability to travel and adapt various environments like the land, water, and climate. Also, sharing information about tools and weapons led to the spread of technology. It also helped humans to transmit information across generations that led to creation of markets, trades, and giving rise to cities. Next, script. The very first writing allowed humans to communicate, share knowledge, and ideas. Early writing systems began to appear after 3000 BCE with symbols carved into clay tablets. With the writing surfaces, in this period humans had a medium that propelled globalization. Script allowed a permanent codification of economic, cultural, religious, and political practice and were spread over large distances and handed down through time. Next, printing press. It was invented around 4th and 5th century AD. It is said that it transformed businesses, markets, nations, and schools, and many more. It also started the information revolution. Before it emerged, the production of written documents was slow and expensive. With the birth of printing press, reading materials was surprisingly made cheaper and easily spread to everyone, and it really helped foster globalization. Printing press was invented by Johannes Gutenberg in 15th century. Examples of the product of printing press are newspapers, magazines, newsletters, and many more. Next, electronic media. Examples of electronic media are telegraph, telephone, radio, film, and television. The telegraph became a global medium for it eventually sent coded messages. In this period, telephone with its ability to transmit speed over distance became the next communication breakthrough. Radio, a wireless telegraph that transmits music and news, reaching regions without the construction of wires and looms. Television is considered the most powerful and brought together visual and film with radio. Largely because of television, the world became a global village. And lastly, digital media. It is a type of electronic media where information is stored in digital form. It uses computer technologies to communicate and share information. Examples of digital media are computer, social media, websites, and many more. In this period, anyone with computer has access to economic information. It also allows industry to access to a global marketplace. The social media allows citizens to communicate among themselves and adopt new practices and culture such as music, education, fashion, arts, and many more. As you can see, media made globalization possible. With the periods of media and globalization, we saw marked influence of media on globalization. It is beyond impossible to think that globalization is emerging without the influence of media.
Hello everyone, so now we are going to talk about cultural globalization processes. What is cultural globalization? Cultural globalization refers to the sharing of ideas, meanings, hobbies, and values around the world in such a way as to extend and intensify social relations. This process is marked by the common consumption of cultures that have been diffused by the internet, popular culture media, and international travel. This has added to processes of commodity exchange and colonization which have a longer history of carrying cultural meaning around the globe. The circulation of cultures enables individuals to partake in extended social relations that cross national and regional borders. Example of this, we have the trading of commodities such as coffee. Coffee is said to be originally from Ethiopia and consumed in the Arabic region. Nonetheless, due to the commercial trades after the 11th century, it is nowadays known as a globally consumed commodity. Hybridization. Now let's talk about hybridization. John Peter suggested that cultural globalization involves human integration and hybridization, arguing that it is possible to detect cultural mixing across continents and regions going back many centuries. We have examples right here. We have the Louisiana Creole. Louisiana Creole, which is a combination of African, French, and English languages. We also have the global restaurant chains like Kentucky Fried Chicken. We have the KFC and also the McDonald's modifying their menus to suit the tastes or mores of different cultures. Now we also have techno, a type of electronic dance music that began in Detroit in the 1980s and made its way around the world from German techno to Melbourne bound. Homogenization. Homogenization emphasizes the transfiguration of worldwide diversity into a pandemic of westernized consumer culture. The dominance of American culture influencing the entire world will ultimately result in the end of cultural diversity, which lead to a human monoculture. This process, understood as cultural imperialism, is associated with the destruction of cultural identities dominated by a homogenized and westernized consumer culture. We have here examples. Coke and McDonald's may be very popular in the USA, but in India, only the few rich can afford them, and they become status symbols. In China, traditional Chinese restaurants are still dominant. Across different regions and countries in the world, more and more people seem to watch the same entertainment programs, listen to the same music, consume common brand products and services, and wear the same or similar clothes, according to Prasad and Prasad 2006. Now let's talk about conflict intensification. Clash of civilizations. Samuel Huntington emphasizes the fact that while the world is becoming smaller and interconnected, the interactions between peoples of different cultures enhance the civilization consciousness that in turn invigorate differences. The differences in culture sharpened by this very process of cultural globalization will be a source of conflict. In conclusion, every culture maintains its cultural particularities while absorbing and interpreting cultural characteristics of other societies with which they are in contact. In fact, cultural exchanges among nations are positive, as seen with the influences that global trade transactions have exerted on cultural identities. These transactions are not purely and solely destructive and negative for local cultures. They also bring about more possibilities and opportunities. In this regard, cultures are dynamic rather than static and can incorporate foreign contributions into their components without being necessarily subject to cultural domination.
Good morning, everyone. I am Doran May Viernes, and my topic is all about globalization of culture and media. The globalization of culture is often chiefly imputed to international mass media. After all, contemporary media technologies such as satellite, television, and the internet have created a steady flow of transnational images that connect audiences worldwide. So the mass media are seen by today as playing a key role in enhancing globalization, facilitating culture exchange, and multiple flows of information and image between countries through international news broadcasts, television, programming, new technologies, film, and music. If before the 1990s mainstream media system in most countries of the world were relatively national in scope, since the most communication media have become increasingly global, extending their reach beyond the nation state to conquer audience worldwide. International flows of info have been largely assisted by the development of global capitalism, new technologies, and the increasing commercialization of global television, which has occurred as a consequence of the regulation policies adopted by various countries in Europe and the US in order to permit the proliferation of cable and satellite channels.
Cultural imperialism. According to Tomlinson of 2012, the idea of cultural imperialism indicates that one or more cultures are imposing themselves more or less consciously on other cultures, thereby destroying local culture in whole or more likely in part. Cultural imperialism, it is the domination of one culture over another. Herbert Skinner's book entitled Communication and Cultural Domination first coined the phrase in 1976. The concept of cultural imperialism is often used to refer to the idea of America exerting cultural influence over the rest of the world with a particularly powerful imposition on third world countries. It can take a form of general attitude or an active, formal, and deliberate policy, including military action. Economic or technological factors may also play a big role in cultural imperialism. For example, the cultural products of the first world invade the third world countries and conquer the local culture. Specifically, the Western culture, American culture, has completely conquered and reorganized another culture, the weaker culture to be exact, especially the third world countries' culture, into a certain unitary imperial culture, such as by the Disney cartoons, Hollywood movies, McDonald's fast foods, and Levi jeans have conquered another cultures via export. Cultural imperialism occurs when the traditions and the way of a life of a group of people, whether an ethnic minority or an entire nation, are displaced by those of another. This may be a conscious process in which a dominant group intentionally suppresses another culture by suppressing its language, music, religion, symbols, or another practices. More often, however, Witzer of 2011 claims that it is the result from a global market capitalism's drive to increase profits through rationality, homogeneity, and parsimony. The core concept of cultural imperialism. As one of the society exerts cultural influence over another, the latter society adopts its own customs, philosophies, worldviews, and general ways of life. Under the imposition of another culture, the lesser culture is thought to be lose some of its own culture. While this has some positive effects, showing women's right or racial equality, it can potentially exert a negative effect on the viewer's perception of his own country. Critics of cultural imperialism. The concept assumes that human is being lack of free will. describing them as mindlessly assimilating what they absorb through media without retaining their own personal frame of reference. Other critics note that while economic aspect of cultural imperialism can be concretely measured, the cultural component is subjective and difficult or impossible to quantify. It is because it is employed a theory of suffering from a vague language of domination, colonialism, coercion, and imposition.